Another great story for you today. You know, we're full of them. We're just full of great stories. This one's pretty unique, actually. You already know our love affair with Marietta Cellars, arguably the greatest value winery in the state of California. Release after release, wine after wine. These guys continue to deliver fabulous wines, great prices, and here's the thing. You know, like some people might think that they're cheating, right? You know, sometimes when you're doing this kind of thing for this kind of money, it's like, oh, I'm sure they're, you know, cutting corners. Oh, I'm sure they have high yields. Oh, I'm sure they're using these super young vines. Oh, I'm sure they're using these yada yada clones. Oh, I'm sure they're sourcing from Lodi. Oh, I'm so sure they're... Well, here's the deal. The Bill Bros are actually doing everything the opposite of that. I'm gonna make it very clear. These guys are going for the lowest yielding gear, super old vines, minimal intervention in the cellar, and then delivering at incredible prices. And this wine is an absolute poster child for what the gang at Marietta is doing nowadays. This is the Game Trail 2021 Cabernet Sauvignon from the Yorkville Highlands. The Bill Bros are very active in the Yorkville Highlands, this area above Sonoma County here. High elevation, rugged, rocky, what we call marginal climate viticulture, borderline heroic viticulture. Very cool up here. And you know, Chris Bilbro a few years back had the insane idea of planting Cabernet up here, right? So, okay, first of all, planting Cabernet in this neck of the woods can be a bit difficult. Maybe, you know, he could have been ahead of climate change, right? So there's that, because they're like smart and stuff. But beyond that, he's like, okay, I'm gonna put Cabernet there, but you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna plant Clone 6. Now, for the lay Cabernet drinker, that means nothing to a lot of folks. But to the hardcore Cabernet Sauvignon aficionados, Clone 6 is a big deal. It is the biggest deal. And now I'm gonna tell you the story of Clone 6, because it's a hell of a story. So, back in the 1860s, 1880s, California was looking to plant Cabernet Sauvignon, and they were looking to find out which clones or which, you know, styles of Cabernet Sauvignon from what parts of the world were most viable for California. So UC Davis, even at that point in time, grabbed a lot of clonal material from France and started putting it into an experimental vineyard in the northern Sacramento River Valley, near close to the school. And they did some research, and what they did find out were there were a couple clones that simply weren't viable at all. For what they needed, quantity, you know, an overperformer, they wanted high yields back then. And what they did discover was that the Clone 6 that they sourced was not viable. Now, this Clone 6, rumor has it, maybe came originally from Chateau Margaux, but they are very confident it came from Bordeaux, and this is probably pre-phylloxera. Very good chances a pre-phylloxera clone that was sorted and brought in. So anyway, there was this experimental vineyard station. Even early on, they were like, Clone 6, there's no grapes. Literally, the clusters were these scraggly, nasty little clusters with a few BBs on them. And at that time, they were like, screw this. Clone 6 ain't happening, so just ditch it. What happened is this experimental vineyard was basically left abandoned in 1903. And for 70 years, almost, it went untouched. Just overgrown, sprawled out, just nasty looking, you know, like those vineyards in Cucamonga or whatever. And then eventually, another group of folks led by Austin Gaheen, I think his name was, came into this area and started finding these old clones and then repropagating them. Now, one of the places they repropagated was BV4, Beaulieu Vineyards. The Chefs were doing lots of work with clones and figuring out what Cabernet Sauvignon works best at this time. And they were one of the Ne Plus Ultra, well, still are, one of the Ne Plus Ultra Cabernet Sauvignon producers in Napa. So in BV4, which we now know as Beckstoffer Tokalon, they planted a bunch of experimental clones, including this Clone 6. Now, they planted the Clone 6, and along with Clone 4 and several other clones, and they spent a few years experimenting with these vineyards. BV did blind tastings of these different clonal selections from the vineyard. And every year, guess which one won? Clone 6. And this really pissed BV off, because It is a low-yielding, non-existent, scraggly clone. But they couldn't resist. So they, in fact, started sourcing and using a bit of Clone 6 in their wines. This came over to Andy Beckstoffer, who, of course, Clone 6 is a main integral part of the Beckstoffer To Clone vineyard now. Wines like all the Schrader wines, Tor, Paul Hobbs, all use Clone 6 now for their super high-end Cabernet Sauvignons. Anyway, Chris Bilbrough, not only was he crazy enough to plant Cabernet in Yorkville Highlands, he planted Clone 6 in the Yorkville Highlands. Complete financial suicide. He works as hard as he can with VSP shoe positioning and everything to maximize the yield to 2 tons per acre, which is easily less than half of the average Napa Valley Cabernet Sauvignon vineyard that's making $300 Cabernet. Like, ridiculous. All right, so let's start there. His yields are probably half of any comparable vineyard in the Napa Valley at $200 to $300 a bottle. Then he takes the grapes, look at this color, beautiful color. Neutral barrel, 20 months. So he saves some money on the oak, huh? Because he's just using neutral oak barrels for 20 months. Because he doesn't want flavor to get in the way here. He doesn't want oak to get in the way of the wine. This is beautiful. I can see why the BV folks were really high on this clone. It is more Bordeaux-y. Good Bordeaux though. You know, Pouilly, you get more of that Cassis graphite character in this wine. You feel the rocks. You feel, this isn't just about like this big splurge of big kind of jammy purpley fruit. This is a more serious style of Cabernet Sauvignon. Oh dear. It's very nice. Different than Napa. You feel the structure here. You feel the elevation. You feel the rocks. You feel the tension in the wine with zero oak influence. You feel the concentration, but what makes Clone 6 so unique and so special is that it delivers concentration with finesse and elegance. This is a higher toned clone of Cabernet Sauvignon. This is not a jammy, 16 octane, super gooey style of Cabernet Sauvignon. I love the restraint here. I love the refinement combined with the power. You know, when they say Margaux, you know, it almost feels like Margaux-y, you know, like maybe some of those early Margaux clones, the ones that, was it Abreu or who was it? You know, when they brought it over to Inglenook. You know, almost that same vibe, those early Inglenook clones that guys like Nyers planted over in Con Valley. This wine has that feel to it. So don't mean to get super nerdy with you guys. Usually it's more like fun and dancing and like this. But there was a lot of ground to cover today, and it's very important with this wine because we want to explain to you just what an incredible value this wine is. When you talk about the other Clone 6 wines produced in Napa, you're talking an average price of $200 to $500 a bottle. Schrader Clone 6, BV Clone 6, Hobbs Clone 6, Beckstoffer To Clone, Carter GTO, Schrader Old Sparky, all Clone 6. Again, cheapest one on that list, 200 bucks. This wine, $37. Pretty easy call. A shout out to the Bilbroughs once again for delivering incomparable value. You guys are nuts, crazy, and we love you. Oh yeah, 94 points, Wine Advocate for keeping score.